Welcome. This is the podcast series dedicated to living a revenue culture. The pandemic taught us a number of things, but one of them for sure was that business survival depends on being able to continually produce more profitable revenue. And we probably knew that before, but what the pandemic helped us with is producing the most profitable revenue, maximizing profitable revenue requires that you live a people first culture, and that people first culture is focused on some big purpose and it's transferring value to ideal buyers. And so that's what this series is dedicated to. And today we're lucky to have Rick Stoddard with us. And Rick and I have been friends and worked together for a long time. Rick is the VP of Client Services at Encora. And Encora is an international provider, a leading provider of automation services, outsourcing, compliance, technology. And I'm going to have him tell you about it. And I'm also going to have him brief you on his background, how he got here, because he's had a really interesting background. But there's two things he's humble enough he's probably not going to tell you that I will. Is Rick is probably either the best or tied for best networking person I've ever met. And the unique part about the way Rick networks is the second thing I want to tell you is he always does it to help the other people. You know, in revenue science, we talk about buyer's frame of reference. Well, Rick lives from other people's frame of reference. He's very giving, sharing, and everything he does is how do I make the world a better place? So welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it.
So what I'd love you to do to start is share your background, because I know you've done some really fascinating things over your career. And, you know, now you're in an international company that's doing some really kind of groundbreaking work. So bring us up to date on what got you here and, you know, how that, has made a difference in your work.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'll give you just a really quick overview of my background. And I many times I reflect on, what I'm doing now in the journey. And it's been really actually fascinating, because I can tell you, when I was in high school, I never dreamed I would be doing what I'm doing today. Right. And so I'm actually an accountant by degree. I've never practiced accounting, worked for an accounting firm. My first job out of college was with a company called Xerox. So I am a professional trained salesperson. And that was a really, really great foundational start to my career. I grew up in the West, so most of my work has been in the West. I actually went to school in Cleveland, Ohio, Case Western Reserve. So that was a departure and an education in itself. But I soon found myself. I was very interested in technology. And I'm not an engineer, but I was always fascinated by technology. And I had an opportunity to actually work for an electronic distributor. And at that time I was living in Colorado. And what was interesting about that whole experience, honestly, I didn't know a capacitor from an integrated circuit, but I became very successful. And one of the reasons why I believe I was successful, it wasn't about the product. It was about the customer, their needs, and how I could best fulfill on those needs. So at a very early age, I guess I was practicing some of the fundamentals of revenue science. So I was in the semiconductor. I actually, from electronic components, I got more into the semiconductor industry, had my own company for about 13 years, and I was closely aligned with a company you may have heard of called Motorola Semiconductor. And at that time, and it was a big play, and we had a lot of fun. It actually had us move to Arizona to support some of those activities. when I exited that after 13 years, I did some consulting work, and I worked with companies around, demand creation and sales, and I soon found myself in the world of startups. And in startups, I got associated with an accelerator. So again, fascinated by entrepreneurs and technology. And that was a really great experience from the standpoint of just understanding the entrepreneurial mindset and what could you really do as a startup entrepreneur. How can you focus on what's most important in the building of your products and engaging with the market? Because you don't see a lot of that when it comes to startups. Now, I also, just previous to that experience, I got into software for the first time. Again, I didn't know anything about coding other than I took some Fortran, I think, in college. That was about it, right? So, so software, again, I'm around innovation, companies that are moving fast, and that's what actually had me gravitate to the opportunity that I'm involved in now. So Encora is a global outsourced software provider. It's a pretty exciting company. It's been around for about 18 years. They have, I think now, well over 5,000 employees. We're in the Pac Rim, we're in India, we're in Costa Rica, we're in Mexico and South America. So we're truly a global player. And probably the best thing about the opportunity I'm now involved in, I get to talk to people all over the world. And what I find is they're all just people. They have some of the same concerns, and it's just a great experience to be able to connect with people and assist them and coach them and teach them about what's most important, not only to them, but also our clients and our prospects. So that's a little bit about my background and on Cora. So hopefully I answered your question as far as my background.
Well, and it's I had forgotten that you and I are the two people trained as accountants who spent our life as salespeople.
Right.
And Rick, tying together two or three of the things you were talking about is, when you talked about why you were successful in the early days, which was the conversations you had, with those customers, so that you were understanding them and what was important to them. When you and I talked the other day to get ready for this, you shared with me what you call the new conversation. Would you share with everybody else what that means to you and how it's been so helpful in your career and what you're doing?
Yeah. So one of the things that the new conversation, particular with the field that I'm in and the focus that we have, notoriously, the outsourcing is notoriously, there's some bad experiences. There are continue to be competitors. It's all about pricing. It's all about them. But what's lacking in fact, I've yet to find anyone talk about, it's not just the technical side of the business and what you're providing, but it's also, there's a culture conversation. When I say a culture conversation, what I mean by this is, our model is we don't retain a large bench. Now, okay, sometimes we go, well, how do you support the market? Well, we believe that's actually to all of our advantage, because if you have a large bench, you're just looking to place people, right? So they have a certain experience, and you've got to get them off the bench, and you're looking for the first opportunity to get them placed. Our model is we take job descriptions, we go to market, we vet, we screen for our clients and for our prospects. And we're looking for And when they provide those job descriptions, we certainly look for the technical match, but we're also listening for, is there a culture fit? And what we find is, because we do that kind of vetting, and by the way, once we do that, we bring vetted candidates to the client. They decide who they want, and then we hire them as our employees, but they're 100% committed to those clients. But what we have found over the years, our attrition rate is lower because of that model. And we definitely attribute the culture fit as a part of that. And when I talk to new prospects and we bring up this whole culture element, I've yet to have someone that didn't say, wow, that's pretty interesting. I've never heard anyone talk to me about that before in this particular space.
Well, Rick, that's fascinating. And you've been involved in revenue science for a long time. And as I'm listening to this, I'm just imagining the difference in the cost of chaos for your clients and for Ancora, because when you find the right person, put them in the right slot with the right client, to me, that sounds like longevity. It sounds like the employee is probably more engaged in the work. And so everybody's costs go down and everybody's profit goes up, and the employee probably has a whole lot more fun in the process. Have I kind of got that right?
Oh, no, that's dead on. Because here's the facts. The facts are, the industry, the attrition rates can be anywhere from 25 to 30% per year. That's pretty high, right? And if previous to this year, I think our attrition rates have been running around 8 to 10%, much lower. Okay. Now, the challenge is when you have turnovers in teams of engineers, it absolutely has an impact on velocity. And the game in software is velocity. If you have a product that the market has adopted, it's about, how do I get to that next rev, the next rev, the next rev? And a lot of these companies obviously are part of PE firms, they're venture backed. And so the game is, you got to go faster.
Wow. So in addition to just, putting my cost accounting hat on and saying, well, your costs are actually lower with less attrition. And, so we can talk about lower costs. You're recognizing the fact that it's really how fast do I get a quality product into the market to start creating revenue that's even a bigger driver than just the reduction in cost.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. So we're at the stage, the conversations, it's a given. If people are going offshore and nearshore, they're receiving a reduction in their typical investment in software development. If you're in the States, it's going to be so that it's a given. And if that's really your conversation, you've already lost. Right? You've already lost. You've got to be leading with and listening to what the challenges are and how they can be addressed. And invariably, the retention is going to be a piece of that. They're experiencing, they've either had experiences or currently having experiences with vendors that they just can't seem to retain the talent.
It's interesting as I'm listening, I'm hearing a couple of things in all the years that I've been involved with offshore or nearshore, or however people chose to talk about it, that I'd never quite clicked on before. But one of the ways you're helping your client's world get better is there's a shortage of talent here. So you're actually going to places where there's talent available and making that talent available to companies here, for example. And I'm going to ask you this. My assumption is when I go get talent from another part of the world, I'm guessing they bring some ideas that maybe we're not thinking about here. Is there truth to both of those things?
Yeah, and that's another part of the conversation. A lot of, in many instances, talent is assembled, but they're not very proactive with challenging assumptions and ideas. They're basically, tell me what to do and I'll go do it, which, okay, there's a place for that. But it really is, we encourage, we train to, and we look for problem solvers. It's not just banging away code. It's like listening to and being part of that company. That's the other thing, when we hire these people, they're our employees. However, from the start, it's ingrained. Look, this is your company, whatever that client's name is. That's who you're working for, really working for, and it's up to you to challenge and be part of their team. That's what they want from you. So that's that's also a big differentiator.
So it sounds like a lot of your work is not just, can I find a resume that matches box for box, but can I really find humans that align with the potential assignment area, the client, and are kind of excited about the work and want to be part of the team. And do you have the client team and the Encore team coming together? I mean, do they come together so they actually function over long term?
Oh yeah.
As a unit?
Yeah. So basically, when let's just say a team is assembled, let's just say it's 5 people. That team is plugged directly into that client, and they report into that client. Our role is then just to support that whole interaction however we can, to not only spot where there may be challenges, but to continue to enhance the relationship.
So in this virtual world, you're really helping people expand their culture and grow maximize their profits at the same time. Is that, sounds like you're the poster child for this series.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to what you just said. What's also interesting, where a lot of the old model is companies say, okay, I want to have my people in a certain country and I want them co-located at a facility. Well, guess what? People haven't been working in facilities for well over a year. So the conversation is now to include distributed teams. And more and more companies are open, because they've witnessed and they've experienced that the efficiencies haven't decreased. The teams are productive, the individuals are productive. So the plus, if they're willing to continue going down that road, and as they're growing, it allows us to increase the talent pool by looking outside of certain markets. So instead of, for instance, just Peru, all of a sudden, I could actually look all over Latin America for talent. That's a big deal.
And one of the things people have talked about, and I've been on boards of companies where, we're in the US and we have a operation in India, for example. And in certain situations, the fact they're in a different time zone is wonderful, because certain kinds of work, we get up to a certain point at the end of our day, and then it transfers over. And when we come back in the morning, a whole bunch of stuff is done. And in other cases, we've wanted people in the closer time zones so we can collaborate. And from a cultural standpoint, both of those are a really big deal, and they both have huge impacts on profit. What do you guys experience with that, and how do you help your clients with it?
Well, again, it's about them. It's not like we have one model, take it or leave it. So we have some clients that are only offshore. We have some that are only nearshore. We have some that have both, right? And then we also have some, like, will say, we really would like to be offshore, but we've experienced the old model where there's the time difference and syncing up, and I don't want to be on these early calls, et cetera. Then we accommodate that, and we set it up so that they can actually have team meetings in the mornings, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, which again, they're not used to that type of response.
Yeah, one of the things that I think the pandemic has helped us recognize is, for years, people would, their whole focus would be on how do I make the most money this week? And then they get around to culture someday, maybe. And they treated culture like I'm going to go to the app store and buy a culture. And what I hear you defining is the recognition that culture is a result of how we manage, how we do business, what our business models are. And it sounds like Encora's in a position to help organizations build the culture they want while they're making more money. Is that a accurate
Yes,
assessment?
absolutely. That's what we strive for. Absolutely. And it's all about, most certainly, our engagements are long terms. I mean, these are typically for years. So there is continued to be building of trust. So it's all those little things that you can do to make a difference, and that it's not a vendor. It is really a partnership.
Yeah, interesting. Because you and I have talked about this before. I think Simon Sinek helped us recognize elephant in the room when he wrote the book on the infinite game. And too often we're pulled, and you mentioned some of your clients are funded by VC or private equity, and so there's a certain urgency there. But I think the other thing that's happened today is we've recognized that the world is transparent, and they see us and they say, if you're just a short-term mercenary company, as a customer of yours, I'm not very interested, because I really want people that are going to play for the long term. So you guys actually play for the long term with your client and help your client play for the long term with their client.
Yes. Yeah. And it's also, so there is the conversation of we need to move fast. Okay, I got that. But does that always apply to velocity? Velocity is a longer term play. And sometimes starting slower has a greater impact on velocity. So, and I'll give you a specific example. Sometimes it takes us longer than maybe one of our competitors to find the right fits. But they're fits that there's more stickiness, the attrition rate is lower, and it has a direct impact to increased velocity.
Well, one of the things that I think the research is pretty clear, if I run a company that's short-term in nature, and I'm planning to, I'm building an app, and I'm planning to flip it as soon as I get it to a certain point, and I'm going to walk away from it, I tend to attract employees and customers who are equally short-term in nature. And we call that term mercenaries. We are a mercenary. We're just here until we can win the battle and flip it. And we tend to hire and partner with mercenaries, and our customers tend to be mercenaries. And when that happens, the employees tend to come and go based on who offers them an extra $5 an hour. And what I'm hearing you say is, you guys are on the opposite side of that. You want the lowest turnover rate possible. You want the greatest consistency in your client over a long period of time. And even if you start slow, you're starting with a model that says, we're an infinite company. We're not going away. So as an employee or a customer, you see us as a long-term partner. Is that your experience?
Yeah, well, overall, that's our experience, and that's absolutely how the kinds of conversations that we're crafting, so that's something that our clients and our prospects they feel comfortable with, and they understand. And that's really, I think our industry is really no different than a lot of other industries. Unfortunately, when you have lots of competition, there's a lot of bad actors, and those bad actors actually taint the pool. So you have to really speak to your prospects, to them in a way that alters their listening as to what is typical and what's different from what what you are actually talking about. And there's that takes work. That takes work to craft, it takes work, by the way, to also, it's not like I was born being a great listener. You have to develop those skills and be able to ask the kinds of questions that are relevant and that are most important to that client and that prospect.
That's fascinating. Let's switch gears for a minute. And we've talked a lot about Encora and your clients. Let's talk about the humans that you guys bring on board and then place with the clients. What's their experience in this model?
Well, their experiences, they're okay. So what it I wouldn't say all, but I've got to believe the biggest percentage, and certainly it's been my experience in the conversations I've had, they're part of now companies that are up to something exciting. So they're part of that. And they're being looked to as in that they're important in that development of the products of that company. So it really is, it's for them, it's prestige, it's and having the opportunity to work with exciting companies in the US is very attractive. Most of our clients are SaaS software companies. That market, it's exploding. It's absolutely exploded.
Yeah. One of the things that our research says is that successful cultures really start with a big purpose, where it's more than just, are we going to make any money and we're going to flip this thing? It's, can we really have an impact on our ultimate customer? Can we transfer value to them and see them enjoy or succeed based on what we created? And so it sounds like part of your onboarding and triage process and matching between who you hire and where you place them is matching people who are excited about a purpose with the people who are executing the purpose.
Yes, that's our goal, is to make sure that we have the best match possible.
Very cool. So let me ask you, I'm going to switch gears again with you. And as we are clearly coming out of the pandemic economy, and we're on to whatever this new world is going to be, what are the lessons that came out of that pandemic economy that you and Encora are now applying in today's world? I don't know if we know what today's world really looks like yet, but what are the lessons and how are you applying?
Yeah. Well, okay, there's a couple lessons that I think applies to some of our conversation, and then I've got my own personal. But overall, so one thing, most definitely, the pandemic proved that we as a company can be highly productive, efficient, not being in offices. We've also are, pre-pandemic, it would be, I could be traveling at any given time, drop of a hat. If someone in New York said, I need to see you, I'm on a plane. I could have a client that says, I want to go visit my team in India, I'd be on a plane. So the travel expenses have been dramatically reduced. So obviously that goes to the bottom line. So that's some obvious things. And I think there's a rethinking along with all companies, is like, okay, so are we going to have people back into offices? And if so, what's that going to look like? So that's still, now we still are not in our offices anywhere. I think the plan is maybe sometime this fall where there is no travel. So I'm not traveling to other states and seeing clients. So what we're also learning is, guess what? You can still have very impactful conversations via Zoom. You can make a difference. You can actually begin to build some trust so that you can do all those things virtually, where, pre-pandemic, I don't know that a lot of people would have believed that. Now,
Right.
For me personally, it's taken me to adapt some of my style. I'm a very social animal. I love my networks, my ecosystems. I love touching people, handshakes, hugs, if that's permitted. So that was a little bit, initially it kind of took, but you know what? I found, and I found other professionals that we banded together to be able to continue to increase our networks and building and learning more about ecosystems in areas that we're pursuing. So there's so much that innovation, the innovation during this time has accelerated. It's incredible what's happened. And that's what I've seen that personally, and then with our company. So those are some of the, I would say, the biggest things that I've learned and I've experienced through this.
I'm going to ask you a networking question now.
Yeah.
As you were talking about what you've learned about how you can create, a different network, but a very powerful and meaningful network. Are you now more international in your network than you were 2 years ago?
Okay, so international, well, I am, because I've spent more time. Now there's the network internally, like the network inside of Ancora. So I'm now more networked into contacts throughout the company and internationally, which I wasn't really, it wasn't so much required before. From a business standpoint, all my clients are stateside, but
Okay.
my network has expanded nationally, no question. In my role, I have no territory, so I go wherever my contacts take me.
Interesting. And a lot of that feedback you just gave me was about Ancora out. What do you see is different about your clients post-pandemic? When people would almost expect you to be in New York or expect you to be in India or wherever. Has that changed?
Oh yeah, I mean they're overall. I mean they're understanding, and they realize we still have a job to get done. So that it's going to require us to innovate the way we communicate, be more willing to take on maybe new things that in the past we wouldn't have been comfortable with. But it's still about, it still boils down to, I don't care what you're doing, you've got to find, if you've got to find a way to build a relationship. And it has to be, and if you're building a relationship based on trust, that's what's going to make the difference long term.
Yep. And the other one, and I think this is, maybe it's not obvious, it seems obvious that because it has affected me this way, is that when I don't have to be on a plane or even in a car and drive 45 minutes across town just to have a conversation, I get a lot more done.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I absolutely agreed. You know what? I have no desire to go back into an office, every day of the week. I'm just fine working. I work from home, but I actually find I probably put in some more hours than I would, but it also, I have some more flexibilities to do things.
Yep. Okay, well, Rick, this has been great. I have one last ask of you, and that is there anything you would like to share when we're thinking about how do we maximize our profits by optimizing our culture? Are there any observations or thoughts or experience that you'd just like to give to our viewers as a place to end with?
Well, I think it goes back to something that we talked a little bit about, that the whole culture piece is understanding that culture. And if you can find a way to adhere to that culture, to enhance that culture, it's only going to be good for everyone in the long run. And and you're going to have the kinds of relationships that last for years. And that puts you, the bell curve. We've talked in revenues, or where do you want to be on that bell curve? Well, you don't want to be on the right. So you want to be, if you're going to be leading edge and you're going to be promoting technology, how do you engage people in a way that they become long-term clients and it's not transactional?
Well, thank you for that. And I love you use the term, long-term or similar in there. And so many of us get caught in this schism that somebody says we have to produce big numbers this month or this week or this quarter. And we forget the fact that sometimes that's at the expense of the long term. And employees want to work for places that aren't selling tomorrow for today, because they still want to be here tomorrow if it's a meaningful, important thing to do. And so I think you're spot on that this is a new learning for a lot of us in business, is to balance the fact that, of course, we have to survive in the short term. But if we're going to thrive in the long term, the only way we thrive is when we have a culture that loves what we're doing and understands it and really takes control of executing. So,
yes, yep, agreed.
So with that, I want to thank you for being here today. And I want to thank the audience. And Rick's contact information is on the screen. So for those of you who want to reach out and join his network, I'm sure he's open for more network. And I hope you'll be with us for the next one in a couple of weeks. And if you have any questions, my contact information is also there, so you can reach out. But thank you for joining us. Have a great week.